relate to all of the teachings? Well, you do. You have it in your Akash, even if you weren't actually there. Is that a better answer?
I think that's a great answer, and it really helps clarify that we hold it within the imprint within our DNA, either passed to us from genealogy or experienced by our past lives. And the point of it all is to be in that presence now, not living in the past. So how about we do a meditation now and focus on having those past attributes all realized in this now moment, and then we'll do a Kryon channel. How does that sound? So I would like to focus on the soup of energy that's within your Akash, all those past lifetime attributes that you may think are in the past are with you now. And so I invite you to close your eyes. And as we close our eyes and remove the outside distractions and influence, this is a moment where you can tune in to the energy of yourself, you who are blessed, anointed, on the planet on purpose, have an incredible history, have an incredible well of knowledge and wisdom within you. And just like a drop of water that gets added to the well, it disperses throughout the entire water. You cannot go back in the past and find what water drop was added at what moment, and let me examine that, for it is part of the whole. The entire well of water has been influenced by the drop of water when it occurred. And so what is it that you have experienced that is with you right now? And what is it that you could pull forward that you need in your life right now? Is it more compassion? It is there in your well. Is it more synchronicity that you wish to create? It is there in your well. Is it more health and vitality for your body? That too is in your well. And so let us make a statement of affirmation. I claim the energy of all my past life attributes that I wish to bring forward into my everyday life. Bring me the things I need to enhance my life. We can even address our innate, dear innate, my beautiful smart body intelligence, bring forward the energies I need to move forward in my life. And now that that affirmation is said, let us relax in the arms of Spirit and welcome in the new message from Kryon.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. The whole subject of Lemuria brings us to a point on this planet that is very much related to that experience. Indeed, all of you at some level, especially those listening and watching this particular program, have Lemurian DNA at some level, passed perhaps from your ancestors. All that means is those 23 pairs of chromosomes, the proof of this, are starting to become 24. And we've spoken of this so often, but what that truly means is part of the theme of these 4 weeks. And I gave you the beginning of that theme last week. It's an examination of the evolution that you're going through. We'll call it the evolving human. And what that actually might mean. Channel after channel, we've given you many attributes, the attributes of this and that, and it may sound similar to what we've given you before, but truly this one focuses on the changing attitudes and consciousness of what evolution might mean. In this particular case, you're evolving with a higher consciousness, as you call this. It isn't a higher consciousness, it is a consciousness that starts to use what you've always had, which is now starting to develop within you a multidimensional sense, that 24th chromosome. It's in the evolvement chromosome. People are starting to think differently, to become more involved in things they were not thinking about before. Last week we gave you perhaps some examples of this. What is your brain like when it's born? If you don't have an anomalies and damage, there are those say they're ready to be written upon. And what I'm telling you is this, is that so much of who you are right now is what you've experienced. The programming from your parents, from those around you, from your peers, how you grew up, what you expected, what you didn't expect. And then that becomes you. And there are so many who will inform you, well, if you had a bad upbringing or perhaps worse, that you had those who put themselves upon you in certain ways that you didn't come out very well. Then they will tell you, well, the prisons are filled with those kinds who were affected by how they were taught. And I want to tell you that this 24th chromosome rewrites all of that, all of it. It's almost like an experience that you didn't have that suddenly comes upon you as though you had it. It's that which you didn't have when you were growing up or weren't taught that suddenly is there because it's remembered from the teachings of Lemurian. It's given to you from the Akash, which never really was as present as much as it is now. An Akash that remembers all good things, an Akash that puts you into wonderful scenarios. Every single week we examine one of these. Thing that perhaps would show you the times are shifting for you. How can you tell that someone is evolving in consciousness? Now let's draw a line of demarcation for a moment. This is not the spiritual box you think I'm going to talk about. If humans are starting to awaken, if the 24th pair of chromosomes is starting to be activated, it's going to affect humanity, not just those watching this program. Have you got that? Humanity. That means consciousness shift is going to start occurring, and you're going to see it. And it's going to be everywhere. And some of it is going to surprise you. Hope you remember that. For these are the messages that are starting to be given, even by those who are not channeling the future like I am. These are things you're going to see, and sociologists are going to talk about the change that occurred just about now. And history will talk about that change just about now. Last week we talked about one of the attributes of how you can tell things are changing and evolving. Here's another one. how you observe others. How you observe others. You're driving along, there's somebody in back of you, they're honking, they want to go faster, they zip around you. What's your reaction? Well, that's going to be talked about next week. I'm not talking about the reaction, it's how do you observe that? What I mean by that is if you put yourself into the driver's seat of the other car, what's going on? How do you then think about that person? It's the way you observe other people that is starting to mature. Whereas that reaction you'd get, which we'll talk about soon, might bring you to frustration or anger if you observe that person in that car in a different way. There is no reaction. Perhaps they haven't had training. Perhaps they're having a bad day. Perhaps they're frustrated. What if that was the case? Would there be an allowance for you to relax and smile and say, let them go? And perhaps they will eventually be more peaceful. How do you observe everyone around you? Do you have a situation where perhaps you go to see people on a regular basis? Maybe you go to work. Maybe you go and see friends and they have friends. Maybe you go to a place that's public or have dinner or whatever. You're always going to see other people. And you're going to see other behaviors. The question is, how do you observe people? You walk into a restaurant and there are other tables filled with people. Some have families, some do not. Sometimes there's just two. Sometimes there'll be men and women, or women and women, or men and men. And it's human nature to make some assessments. You always do. And you always have. And they don't have to be negative, they're simply assessments. The attributes that are happening in maturity and evolution have a person going into that restaurant and looking at all those souls and celebrating their lives. Isn't it wonderful that they are alive at this time and that they may have children that may not see any war anymore? Isn't it remarkable that they are here? I wonder if their soul knows anything about what's happening. I wonder if they are aware that they're starting to think different about me as I walk into this restaurant and they look at me. So your observation of others, the lack of judgment, the feeling perhaps of compassion, and they're smiling when you see them together, even though you don't know what they're talking about or what their life stories are, you start to relate to them as pieces of you, of pieces of the whole of the planet, the oneness that is going on. Can you feel it in your heart that you might be part of them? Can you feel in your heart as the one races by you in the car that's impatient that there may be reasons that you don't know about that are actually valid for that behavior? And you bless them and you're not disturbed at all. And you wonder if they're aware of the involvement that's happening in their lives. You see, it's planetary wide, dear ones, not sequestered to those who are interested in spirituality. The ones who listen to this channel, who are watching this program, well, you are more invested in it because you know that we, the we being those listening, and myself, all invested in a future of this planet that has been prophesied and talked about. You have the tools that can make it go faster, make it better. But everyone on the planet is going to feel it. That's why all of these prophecies were certain in their statements that the planet will change, not just a few. It's planetary, not just for the religious believers. And that's why it's so important. Question, do you think others are going to see this? Do you think there are others talking about this? Do you think perhaps that even as I talk to you, there are sociologists looking at a change that is going on in thinking about others? How do you see those in foreign countries? How did you used to? How did your parents tell you to? If you start analyzing this, you're going to see that the observation of others is starting to mature, is starting to evolve. And the evolvement is to an idea of oneness, all in the same place, not separated anymore, all looking at the same puzzles and issues of the life that you are living, and all ready to help one another eventually to get through it. I'm Kryon, giving you a true assessment of what's going on in your world right now. And so it is.
And following that wonderful, uplifting and powerful message from Kryon, I invite you to open your eyes and bring your awareness back into your body, because we have an extraordinary gentleman joining us this evening who I feel is a brother to Lee and the mission they are both sharing on the planet. And his name, who I feel is a brother to Lee and the mission they are both sharing on the planet. And his name is Dr. Shariff Abdullah. And I want to make sure he's on the Zoom feed with us. Dr. Shariff, are you there?
I am here, and thank you for having me.
Oh, well, we feel so honoured that you are able to join us this evening.
Yeah, I'm kind of jumping up and down here. But if it's all right, let's talk a little bit about Dr. Shariff Abdullah. Dr. Shariff Abdullah is a consultant, author, and advocate for mindfulness, inclusivity, and societal transformation. Shariff's metavision, I love that, and mission are simple. We can create a world that works for all living beings. Excuse me while I jump up and down for a moment. Dr. Abdullah is the author of Power of One, Authentic Leadership in Turbulent Times, and the award-winning book, Creating a World That Works for All. There are more books, lots, but the most recent one, freshly published, the one we're most excited about, is called Birthing the Nation of Gaia. Shariff is the founder and director of the Common Way Institute in Portland, Oregon. He's a graduate of Boston University School of Law and a national leader, defining leadership methods for personal and collective transformation and resilience.
Now, Dr. Abdullah has travelled to over 120 distinct cultures spanning 45 countries on every habitable continent. And when I say he's travelled to those countries and the cultures, he has immersed himself into it. He has taken off the bias of what his own culture brings him and gone and immersed himself into someone else's culture to learn and absorb everything they have to teach him. Now, he uses his experiences as a lawyer, an activist, a world traveller, and a student of many wisdom traditions as he explores the role of spirit, intellect, imagination, stories, strategies and structures for creating change and reimagining the future. Shariff consults with individuals, government agencies, businesses and social service organisations that are working on the leading edge of change.
An inspirational speaker with a prophetic message, Shariff has been a sought-after presenter for consciousness and human potential. He regularly speaks to many organizations, churches, and other religious and spiritual groups, as well as several international forums. Now, here's my favorite definition he's had from him. The nation of Gaia, a nation without violence, separation, poverty, or war. Boy, I want to say that again. A nation, the nation of Gaia, that's us, folks, on planet Earth. A nation without violence, separation, poverty, or war. this birth will happen. It's like a birth of a baby. This will happen and will happen relatively fast. So be prepared. Don't you love that? Wow. Sound like Kryon? Yeah. Doctor, welcome to the show.
It's really good to be here. Thank you very much. It's a fairly glowing introduction. I was like, oh, who's that guy you're talking about?
Well, I think it's a guy that's just
it's a guy that's also glowing.
Yeah,
that's right. Sir, you talk about the baby, birthing the new society. What does the baby look like? Tell us from the beginning. What's this all about?
Yeah, we look at the problems that we have in our society. We look at, you name it, poverty, war, racism, the entire 9 yards. And we over-focus on that. Instead of focusing, it's like focusing on the afterbirth instead of focusing on the baby. We begin to forget that there even is a baby. We begin to deny that there's a baby. We are so focused in on it, we can't stand back and say, wait, where are we going with this? But once we know that this is not the end of the world, this is just the end of a pregnancy, and that what we are going to be moving into is a whole new phase, a metamorphosis, we can start to relax into the process, and we can start relaxing into asking the question, what is this baby going to look like? What is the baby going to act like? The caterpillar doesn't give birth to a caterpillar. The caterpillar metamorphoses into the butterfly. So what is the human butterfly? What is our destiny? Once we start asking questions like that, our spirit can start to rise. Once we start asking questions like that, we can relax into a role and become, for the first time, mature human beings on this planet. I think that's a good idea. And I think that it's an idea that we need to be doing right now.
I agree 100%. And I'm curious, with all the different countries that you've been to, my feeling from my travels is that most of us want peace and harmony and a bright future for our children. Is that what you have found, and what else have you discovered?
Our challenge is, what do regular human beings want? And then what are the leaders telling people that they want? And those are two drastically different scenarios. And that's why I spend as much time as I can in the presence of regular old human beings, people who don't get upset and twitchy around people who have a different religious practice or a different language or a different way of seeing the world. Our challenge, though, is in all of the words that we're hearing through all of the media, that's all of it's trying to direct us in a particular way. Can we actually take the time and listen to, first of all, our own hearts? Second of all, what other human beings are talking about once we get away from all the stuff that confuses us. And that's when things get really interesting. We start seeing people cooperating with each other while their leaders are trying to separate them from each other. I remember being in Russia some years ago, and it was really interesting talking directly to Russians who were constantly apologizing for what their government was doing. And I remember being an American in lots of different countries where I'm apologizing for what this country is doing. And so what we need to do is start the process of transcending these governments so that we get actually to where regular human beings can live and thrive.
What's a good place to start doing that, where we can start having these conversations where we're not always apologizing for the leadership that we are subjected to?
Yeah. So the challenge is, before we even think about doing that, is I have to change my perspective. I have to take my glasses off and I have to put another set of glasses on. I've got to see the world a different way. And we have a way that we have seen, that we are seeing the world. And that way is as an individual. I'm an individual person. I'm wrapped in this skin. I'm sitting in this chair. No one else is in this chair with me. And that individualized consciousness, in my new book, I call it the Solon consciousness, has been the one that's been dominant on the planet for the past, say, 10,000 years or so. And that dominance has given us all the stuff that we've been dealing with, the wars, the strife, the separations, etc. So I have to cure myself of what Einstein called the optical delusion of consciousness, being deluded to thinking that I'm here and you're there. Once we do that, I then can sit down with you and have a conversation with us, not you and me, but us. And we can have that conversation. We can even have that conversation without words. We can begin to have that conversation heart to heart. We can, and I've done this in so many different countries. I remember one time I was in Thailand, and I was in this small village, and there was no one in this place that spoke English. I didn't speak Thai, and we had a ball. Okay, and this one guy, he was trying to tell me which of these children are running all around. Which ones were his kids and their ages, and then I was trying to tell him about my kids and my grandkids, and we did a really good job. And he every maybe 4 or 5 minutes or so, he just had to grab my hand and start shaking my hand again, like I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I was really enjoying it too. And why can't we be that direct and honest and connected to all human beings and then to all living beings?
I'm going to tell you, this has happened to me over and over. I am bad at this. I have to go several times to a country before I get it and get my bias washed out of the way. You mentioned it, I'll say it. I've been to Russia 8 times. And I'll tell you that the first time, the second time, the third time, it was like, why aren't they smiling? What are they, why isn't this going? It wasn't until we got to go to their homes and we find out they are just like us and they want just the same thing we want. Not as free to speak it outside of their homes at the moment. And I mean, with the current situation on the planet, I'm wondering about these same people and how they're doing. And how they're feeling about all these things, because they want the same thing we want. So you're right. It really does take attitude adjustment to get around to get out of basically the programming, I think, of what we're taught. I'm a product of the Cold War. So, that's part of the reasons that I had to go a few times in order to get that way. Would you agree?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, it's our assumptions about each other are predicated on that core belief that I was saying about I am separate, from those people over there. And we do that in terms of our foreign relationships. And it's easy to do that with someone who is speaking a different language, especially if that language is Russian. That's a pretty hard on the ears language. If they have different dietary restrictions, different religious practices, etc. Now, it gets really interesting when that person is acting just like you. They speak the same language, they're got the same diets, they're living right next door to you, and you think that you can't talk to them because there's some fundamental separation there. In fact, they may be even sharing your DNA, and you think that you can't talk to them. Someone was telling me, "Oh, I can't talk to my father." It's like, well, I said, "Is he alive?" It's only when he dies that it becomes really hard to talk with him. Still, you can still do that, but if he's alive, you can find the common ground to talk with him. Yeah.
So when you talk about the birth of the nation of Gaia, I get very excited because I feel that that is also what is in our future. But I feel that we won't all think the same. We won't all have the same necessarily belief system. But for me, I feel that underlying consciousness will be one of love and compassion and kindness towards each other. And that is the thing that will change for us getting along. Is that kind of how you see the nation of Gaia, or tell us more about how you see it?
Right. So I'm talking about a nation that has 8 billion citizens, where all of us will share, not necessarily equally, but equitably. We'll share our resources, we'll share our labor, we'll share our common birthright with each other and with all other beings. So once I recognize that I am in love with myself, I am in love with all other human beings, and I'm in love with all other living beings, then we can start doing things differently. We can start seeing things differently. And at that point, we can have some very interesting conversations. Now, it may not mean that every single one of us has to go around the world all the time, 45 times and all this other stuff. But it means that you have to be aware that when you're looking at a TV program and there are people there who are dressed differently, who are speaking a different language, that you're not looking at those people. You're looking at yourself. Now, this means that we have to suspend the existing systems that we have of nation states that used to be around kings and monarchs and emperors, and now more presidents and prime ministers. But even those need to go by the boards so that we can understand that we can govern each other through a common consciousness, that I am an integral part, I'm a cell in a common consciousness. Now, all of us, I shouldn't say all of us, many of us have had the experience of a common consciousness, an experience of sharing a consciousness with a group of people that you don't know and that you're not physically connected to them. My favorite example of that was I used to live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the Mint Museum used to put these old movies on the lawn at summertime. And so they were between reels. So they've had the movie on, it went dark. And right when it went dark, this huge meteor streaked across the sky.
Wow.
And 3,000 people all at the same time went, ooh. And that freaked us out. The meteor was beautiful, but the sound the harmonic sound of 3,000 people contributing to this, ooh, that people, when I talk to people about it afterwards, they were saying, yeah, the meteor was pretty, but did you hear us?
Amazing.
We're going to call it the ooh effect from now on.
That's right. And so that's available to us at any time. Okay, I mean, that's available to us at when on lots of different levels. My question, and the question that I put in the book is, can we sustain that? Because we know how we feel when we have the common consciousness experience. We know how we feel when we have the holonic consciousness experience. Can we govern our lives with that? And I think the answer to that is yes. Can we work together for that? I think the answer to that is yes. And I think that what we have to be doing now is actually making that happen.
So I have a question in regards to leadership, because I love the idea of cooperative consciousness. And if you feel into what that looks like, to me, I feel that the role of leadership may not even be needed because we are all in alignment with something. We don't need leadership to tell us how to achieve that. So can you comment on what is leadership like for the future, and is it even needed?
I think at least in the short run, it will be needed. I like to think of this as servant leadership or a holonic leadership. That's where we are more cheerleaders than tellers of what to do. This is something that I was, while writing the book, just really discovered that colony beings, each one of them is their own leader. No ant tells another ant what to do. Like, you got to go over there and get that. You can't do this over here. They all figure it out. And when we have holonic experiences, we all figure it out, and we figure out the right thing to do, and we can trust that. So in this situation, a leader is go team, go. And by the way, yes, you are a team, and the goalpost is over that way. We can use our leaders to help give us a sense of direction, but recognize that each one of us is that leader, and that leader has to be interchangeable. And when we look at things that way, we start seeing that there is no ego that's going to get satisfied by saying, I am your leader, and I'm going to be at the top of the podium telling you what to do. Hopefully, in holonic consciousness, nobody will be listening to them. They've got other things to do, and we'll be doing those things together.
I have a question. I know in my case, you find me talking to self-help audiences, spiritual audiences. They're ready for this message. But you're talking to people perhaps who've never heard this before in bigger organizations. How is it being received?
Very interestingly, it's actually being received. Some of the people who say, oh, yes, I'm ready for this, when they start recognizing that this really means you working with people you being connected to people that you would not normally be connected with, all of the fear bells go up. All of the oh, I don't know if I can interact with those people over there. Mm-hmm. And so for all of us, it's, can we overcome our sense of self to the point that we begin to have this connection to a larger sense of self, and that's our challenge. And how do we do that with people who are fundamentally traumatized? We are in a society that creates trauma. How do we do that? How do we ask people to transcend the trauma to come into this other level of reality, a different level of reality? It's not easy, but we can do it, and the results of it will be heart healing for the individual, and then heart healing for the entire society.
We tell people numbers of things. We say, first thing we advise you is to stop watching the news. It's program.
The first thing, the second thing, and the third thing. Yes.
It's programming. And to get your news, read it or get it online so that you can control what you read, how fast you read it, without having music played under it. Things like that.
I got excited, Shariff, when you said there'll be a leader at the podium and no one will be listening.
That's right. And then we also say, it's habit. You get together with your neighbors, and all the first thing people want to do is complain. What if you're trying to change that particular thing and talk about the good things that are happening, or perhaps send energy to those who are experiencing things that need your energy, that kind of thing. So it's a real paradigm change. You're right. You got to work on this one.
Yep. No, this is raising 25 more points, and we're going to go another couple hours here. Yeah. So that's great. But I did a program some time ago called the Commons Cafe, and I did this around the country, and very well received, bringing people who had fundamental differences with each other together over a cup of coffee and some cookies. And part of the difference could be around race, could be around economics, could be around religion, etc. We had lots of different Commons Cafes going. And when we did those, I put people together. All you had was a name tag that had your first name on it, and I wouldn't identify, oh, this is the black one, this is the middle class one, this is the homeless guy. We're just sitting around having coffee. We structured the conversation. So we asked the simplest questions first. We structured the conversation so that, what are the names and ages of all the children and grandchildren that are in at the table? Which means I had to tell you about myself. I have to tell you about my family, and we got to exchange information. And that's another simple question. So by the time we got into the societal stuff, you knew who was sitting at the table. You had a feel for them. You didn't go start beating air at each other, And the results were outstanding. Not so much that people started agreeing with each other, although they did. The result was, I can hear what they're saying. I say, oh, does that mean you was really, yeah. And how does that fit into, and so we wound up repeating these. And the people who came in the first night wanted to stay with the same people the second night, the next night. They were bonding with each other across all these differences. So we know how to get rid of the differences. The question is, who wants that to happen? And in our country, on the left and on the right, there are lots of people who don't want the problem to go away. They want the problem to be exacerbated because they've convinced themselves that's how they win the political game here.
Yeah.
And I'm suggesting that we change the political game so that, again, they're talking to each other and they leave us alone.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, we're out of time.
I love that it's called the Common Cafe, because the website, if you have enjoyed this conversation and these amazing books that Dr. Abdullah has written, the website is commonway.org. And if you want to take advantage of a special discount he's offering our Healing Wednesday members, you can look at the link in the chat or scroll down beneath this video for the link for that offer. But Shariff, is there any kind of final words that you want to say for us this evening?
Yeah, I wanted to say that the offer for the book, the Birthing the Nation of Gaia, I'm starting to get some comments back from people who have been reading my books all along over the past 30 years of book writing. And folks are saying this one may be the most important. This one may be the most understandable. This one people are getting really excited about, and I'm getting excited with them. So once it's in print, I read it again. It's like, oh, now I can actually see what I'm saying here, and it is pretty good. I've enjoyed it. So look forward to having people enjoy it. So, and I've enjoyed my time here.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing everything with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Blessings.
All right. Well, we are now going to take a 10-minute break and go and check out commonway.org. And then we'll see you back here for the Circle of 12.